everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today we are reading His Reasons. It's a Todoroki X Reader fanfiction by AshleyH713. We are going to try to get through chapters 3 and 4 of Season 2. That's just, I like reading Person 2 now. It's easier. Yeah, let's begin. Season 2, Chapter 3. After that strange morning, Mari walked into school without her brother beside her. Their mother made them leave together, but once they turned the corner, Bakugo said he wanted to walk alone. She didn't really seem to mind, though. Just being able to live with him was enough for now. Other things like that would take baby steps. Although she hated to admit it, now that she was alone, Mari felt kind of lonely. Usually, Todoroki would walk with her to class every morning, and without him it felt weird. She supposed that she was living with her brother now. That he probably didn't want to do that anymore. The idea kind of made her disappointed for some reason. She turned into the hallway and caught her eye on the very same person she was just thinking about. He was walking in that same stoic position as usual, heading for the classroom and not paying any attention to anyone. Mari gave a knowing look at that, suddenly wanting to tell him about her first night at home with her family. She was just so happy she wanted to tell someone. It looked like Todoroki was the lucky winner. Racing up to him, she threw her arms out and grabbed onto him in excitement, causing the poor boy to flinch and almost trip over his own feet. "Todoroki, good morning!" He fixed his stare before turning back to her, now feeling a pound in his chest from the sudden shock. "You really need to stop doing that." But she just shook her head, a playful manner in her tone which made it impossible for him to be mad at her. "Aw, sorry, I'm just really happy." Todoroki was thrilled to hear that. Knowing about all the pain she had been through in the past, the girl deserved to be happy. "And why is that?" Mari replied back rather quickly, excited to share her story of last night. "Well, I guess it really isn't anything that big, especially to you. It's just, I think Katsuki and I are starting to get along. If just a little. He didn't yell at me yesterday. How great is that?" Honestly, it was kind of sad that she was happy about him not yelling at her. That should have been common sense to literally anyone. But knowing that they were making progress did make him happy for her. "That's good. I'm glad to hear that." She smiled back, nodding her head like a small puppy dog would. "Right? It's like a dream come true. Maybe we can finally get somewhere now. That would be nice." Todoroki thought for a moment, before putting an understanding hand to her shoulder. "Well, it looks like things are going in the right direction. Just keep being yourself, and he'll realize it soon enough." Not that he needed justification for telling her brother everything, but it was nice to know that he really was taking his words to heart. Well, at least he was trying now. Putting a nervous hand up to her neck, Mari then decided to change the subject. "Yeah, I hope so. Oh, also, since I'm not living by myself anymore, I wanted to talk about us walking together." What the fuck was that? Todoroki blinked at her question, unsure where this was going. He assumed she wanted to say that she would stop coming to school together now that they should stop coming to school together now that her and Bakugo's relationship Bakugo's relationship with her had improved. "Didn't you walk with Bakugo this morning?" But Mari just shook her head sadly. "It seems we aren't there yet." He couldn't help but think about her words. He didn't offer to walk together anymore because he assumed that she much rather would have wanted to spend time with her brother. Casting her eyes away, Todoroki could see a light pigment in her cheeks at her next words, coming out rather rambling. "Right, so I was wondering, I don't live in that apartment anymore, but if you don't mind, If you aren't busy, please stop me or say no if I'm being too annoying or clingy, but I was wondering if you still wanted to walk together? Amari closed her eyes, almost afraid to hear his response, as he just blinked in surprise. Todoroki had always thought of himself as a placeholder for her brother. That is until he decided to finally be there for her. Now that Bakugo was starting to do that, why on earth did she still want to be with him? Taking a step closer, Todoroki tried to understand her reasonings. You still want to walk together? Why? You have your brother now. She paused for a moment before playing with the ends of her hair, muttering out her response low and quiet so that only he could hear her. But I miss you. Todoroki's eyes couldn't help but widen at this, listening to her continue. Just because Katsuki and I are getting along a little bit now doesn't mean that I want you out of my life. He may be my brother, but you're also important to me. Amari then realized what she had just said and turned bright pink, backtracking hardcore and stepping away from him. I mean, unless I'm assuming things and you just want to get away from me, because I totally get that. I'm awkward and I blurt out things all of the time, and I could totally see why you'd be sick of me. It's not like I'm trying to force anything on you or anything. But she was stopped when Todoroki put his hand up, resting it on her shoulder. She could feel his warm palm touch her skin as he replied, I have no idea why you feel that way about me, but I didn't mind walking with you. I wouldn't have suggested it if I hated the idea. Thinking for a moment, Amari replied, So does that mean it's okay? You really don't have to force yourself if you don't want to anymore. But he only nodded his head in response, a tiny smile creeping onto his lips. If I didn't want to then, I wouldn't have done it. Might as well keep going, I suppose. Mari couldn't help but gasp at that, leaping forward and hugging him tightly in excitement. Thank you, thank you. I'm so happy. I thought you wouldn't want anything to do with me anymore. Todoroki shook his head in response, thinking that she completely misunderstood his actions. Truthfully, he did like talking to her. Even if I did, I feel like you wouldn't let go of me, so it's alright. She slapped his shoulder at that in a playful manner before walking together to the classroom. Amari now overjoyed with the conversation they had. Soon it was time for lunch. Usually Amari and Todoroki sat together, although after class he said he had to study for an upcoming exam instead, leaving her alone in the classroom. The bell rang and Amari waved him goodbye. Have fun studying. See you, Todoroki. He just put his hand up in response and left silently, much to the interest of other classmates. Aoyama? Nope, that's not it. Can I just call him Sparkly Boy? Because I'm pretty sure that's what they're talking about. Hey, Amari, don't you think it's weird that you still call him by his last name? Blinking in surprise, Amari turned her brow in confusion. Then she picked up a glass of water next to her before taking a long sip. No, why? Just then, Mina popped in between the two of them, smirking like crazy. Well, duh, it's because you're dating, right? At her words, Amari choked on the water, coughing erratically at the liquid now burning her throat. What were they saying? What? No. I think you're confused. We aren't dating. We are just friends. Her response caught Ayoma? Nope, that's not it either. And Mina to gasp in absolute shock, obviously not believing her words. What? You have got to be kidding. But Amari didn't understand. No? Mina's eyes widened, which made Amari think of something else completely. They both seemed a little too surprised at that. Wait, did both of you think we were dating? Looking at his nails. Ayoma? Answered back plainly. Sweetie, the whole school thinks you are. What do you think Class 1B hasn't jumped on him yet? Why do you think Class 1B hasn't jumped on him yet? You're the only one Todoroki remotely talks to, and you even walk to school together. It seemed obvious. Mari felt her cheeks grow pink and at his comment. What he was saying was ridiculous. They were jumping to conclusions. What? Come on. That doesn't mean we are dating. It just means we're really close. Putting her hands on her chin, Mina leaned closer. A knowing look in her eyes. But you like him, right? This brought an even bigger blush to her cheeks. Because of that, her response came out stuttered. That hadn't even crossed her mind. Well, I guess I never... Ayoma cut her off then, smiling at his next question. You want to kiss him, right? Widening her eyes, Mari stood frozen, not sure how to process his words. All their questions were far too overwhelming. That's when he interfered and inferred something else from it. Oh, unless you already have. Mari slammed her hands on the table then, gaining the response of the rest of the class. Bakugo could tell that she was embarrassed by something, but he didn't care enough to find out what it was. Whoa, 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 whoa. It's not like that, I swear. You guys are getting way too crazy. But Ayoma knew better, leaning forward and placing one finger out in explanation. Alright then. Let's test to see if you two really are just friends or not. How about it? Leaning forward, he began his questions. Have you ever gone out, just the two of you, outside or school? Remembering back to her birthday, Amari couldn't deny that. Well, yeah, but that was... Yet, Ayoma cut her off. Have you given each other gifts? As words, Amari's hands touched the gold bracelet he had given her on instinct. Well... Smirking, Ayoma knew he had won his game. He locked eyes with the poor girl, obviously making her uncomfortable. Last one. Do the two of you know each other's deepest secrets? Amari couldn't help but freeze at that. She supposed he was right. All of those things were entirely true. She did tell him about her entire childhood, although she didn't want to admit it out loud to Ayoma. Knowing that he was right, the boy only laughed, watching her distressed face in amusement. I knew it. Just face it, honey. You like him, and he likes you. It's as simple as that. She felt her face turn a sharp shade of crimson, looking away from the two and refusing to acknowledge his words. There was no way. Romance wasn't even something she vaguely considered before. It seemed like something out of her range. Shaking her head in denial, Amari muttered, No, you're wrong. I can't. Amari started to back away slowly then, edging for the door in utter embarrassment and fear. This couldn't be happening. There was no way. All she knew was that she needed to get out of there before she had a full-blown panic attack. I gotta go. Then she booked it out of there so fast that everyone had no choice but to wonder what the two had said to her. Ayoma chuckled at her flustered reaction, leaning back in his chair carefully. Finally, those two are so tense, I felt like I had to give them a push. He suddenly stopped, though, when a dark shadow loomed over him, clearly not happy in the slightest. What did you say to her, you bastard? Gulping once, the boy turned to find the eyes of no other than Katsuki Bakugo. Oh, hey, Bakugo, what's up? But he wasn't in the mood for games, instead taking his foot and kicking the chair underneath him over, causing the boy to fall to the floor. I'm going to say this only once. No one gets to pick on that brat but me. Got it? Aoma's eyes widened in fear as Mina stepped in, defending him. Calm down, Bakugo. We only teased her a bit. It was all in good fun. But Bakugo only narrowed his eyes, recalling her scared expression racing out of the classroom. They had definitely done something to her. He just knew it. The room seemed to drop in temperature as the boy hissed back, intent in his every word. You better watch yourself, extras, unless you want to die. The classroom grew loud then as they argued with Amari's brother, not really sure why he was so heated about this. To them, they always thought he didn't care that much about these kinds of things. Amari quickly exited the classroom, not really sure where her legs were taking her, but listened to them anyways. She needed to calm down, to stop freaking out so much. Running down the steps to the lower level, she paused and leaned against the wall, hearing Ayoma and Mina's words in her mind on a constant repeat. Just face it, you like him. She shook her head at the invisible voices, talking to herself. Pull yourself together, Amari. He was just messing with you. Yeah, that had to be it. There was no way she actually had feelings for that tomato boy. That would mean that she'd get distracted from her ultimate goal of being closer to Katsuki. That was the only thing she wanted from Yue. She hated to think about what would happen if what they said was actually true. If she did like him, on the off chance, then all she would be doing in the end was give him suffering. Amari's life was on a time limit, and she wasn't about to delude herself into thinking that she could live forever. Being involved with Todoroki like that would only bring him pain, and that's not what she wanted for him. He had already done so much for her. Amari couldn't expect more. That would have just been selfish. Selfish. Did I say that right the first time or the second time? I don't know. Pressing her face against the plaster of the wall, Amari just groaned, ignoring the stares of the various students passing by. This was ridiculous. Why was she even worrying about it this much? Aoma wasn't right. He couldn't be. She couldn't start to think about this ridiculous and distracting emotion called love. Amari didn't have time for it anyways. She had to focus on her relationship with her brother before it was too late. She stopped thinking when Amari felt a group of kids crowd around her and question, clearly interested in why she was face first into the wall. Hey, you're from Class 1A, right? Turning back around, she found herself face to face with a strange purple-haired boy. He was wearing the same uniform as her, but Amari had never seen him before this. He kind of looked intimidating. Yeah, I am. The boy stared at her up and down before cracking a smirk, clearly amused with her appearance. So they even accepted a little shorty like you, huh? Pathetic. Amari's brow ticked with annoyance at that. Had he just insulted her? What's that supposed to mean? But the purple-haired stranger only narrowed his eyes, hatred lining the corners. I heard that Class 1A was supposed to be impressive, but everyone is like you. Then I don't see the need to worry. But if everyone is like you, I don't see the need to worry. Amari's eyes widened at his insult, feeling a wave of rage wash over her. Call it a quirk carried over by her brother, but she was pissed at this guy. Whoa, hold on. First off, you don't even know anything about me, so don't just go and assume anything about my class, you weirdo. Although the boy didn't seem intimidated in the slightest, this time taking a step even closer to her in intent. I know enough, like how you've been talking to yourself for the past 10 minutes outside of my classroom. You don't look like much of a hero to me. She felt slightly embarrassed that this guy had seen her freak out about Todoroki, but didn't want him to know that she wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Matching his stare, she hissed back, You want to test that theory? Once again, he only smirked, turning to his friends in amusement. Oh look, short stuff wants to fight. How cute. Amari seethed at the fact he wasn't taking her seriously. Sure, she was short and small compared to most heroes, but that didn't mean she wasn't just as strong. What, are you afraid you're going to get your ass beat by a pathetic girl like me? He frowned at this. Don't be mistaken. I could mop up the floor with you. But just as she found this funny, I'd like to see you try. Looks like to me you are all bark and no bite. That seemed to have gotten him annoyed, taking another step closer to her in intent, before they heard the bell ring above them. The boy broke eye contact then, sighing in frustration. Looks like I'll have to destroy you another time. You better watch yourself at the sports festival, shorty, because I'm going to win and take your spot in the hero course. Just watch. It should belong to someone that actually deserves it. Amari glared at him as he started to turn around, then, seemingly now done with the conversation, although she wasn't. Who was this annoying, overconfident guy, and why had he just picked a fight with her? Also, how dare he say she wasn't serious about the hero course? The very idea made her angry. She was probably one of the most dedicated people in there. Twitching her eye in annoyance, she lifted her hand, shouting back at him in a louder timbre. Her anger had snapped. If you want to do that, then you'll have to forcibly pry it out of my cold, dead hands, you bastard. I worked hard to be in the hero course, to have it taken. I worked too hard to be in the hero course to have it taken by some rude weirdo like you. Who even are you anyways? Her words caused him to stop, staring at the hallway for a few seconds before turning back to her, and makes both amusement and determination in his eyes. The name's Hitoshu Shinso from Class 1C. Remember it, and your challenge has been accepted. Mari processed the words as he turned back around, shoving his hands in his pockets before walking away. She had never even met any Class C kids before this guy. She hoped they weren't all like that. Balling her hands into fists, she thought about his words as a new scene of hatred washed over her. She wanted to prove that person wrong, no matter what. He would be sorry for underestimating her. Okay. Season 2, Chapter 4. Amari lifted her hand up, still feeling the high from the alcohol in her system. She swayed back and forth, staring into the eyes of her new friend that had somehow materialized himself in front of her. Was he magic or something? How did he get there? She let her mouth ramble out a various number of things, not caring who heard them at all. Touching her eyes, she found tears there, but let them fall anyways. It's not like she could get rid of this feeling of devastation and loneliness, even if she tried. You want to know a secret? The truth is, I don't want to die. The more brave I act, the more scared I become. Katsuki even care when he finds out? Probably not. Funny, right? Oh, I'm probably annoying you again with my stupid problems. Laughing slightly at her own pathetic nature, her blurry eyesight caught Todoroki, who just looked sad. Why was he making that kind of expression? It wasn't any of his business to be sad for her. She hardly even knew him that well. Trying to remember the words she had just said, Amari found it difficult, only feeling a haze wash over her. How many bottles had she drunken before this one? The boy leaned forward then, his hands reaching out for something in particular, but Amari couldn't make out what. His voice was plain but smooth, drawing her in with every breath. Amari, I don't pity you. I admire you. Admire? That was such a silly word, especially coming from Todoroki. Although she couldn't deny the way the words made her so unbelievably happy inside for some reason. It was almost like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She wasn't sure if it was real. What did you just say? Todoroki leaned even closer, wrapping his hand around hers, causing her to lose the grip on the bottle she was holding. His touch, it made her feel warm, comfortable, safe. I told you before, didn't I? I really meant it. You're amazing. And I'm not burdened by this. You can tell me anything, and I'll listen. His words filled her with such joy and happiness, wondering how on earth he wouldn't be burdened by her. She was a train wreck. Amari wasn't sure if it was the alcohol or him that made her body fill with heat. But all she knew was that she was seemingly hypnotized by this man's eyes. It was like they were drawing her in, begging her to get close. She complied, inching closer to his two-tone gaze, wanting to thank him for the words, but finding it unable to. All she could muster out was his name. Todoroki. Amari's fingertips touched his cheek as he replied, scared and uncertain to what she was doing. Yeah? Running her fingertips across his skin, Amari felt the need to trace his features, desperate to touch him and thank him in any sort of way. His eyes were calling her even more, begging her to reach closer. I meant what I said before. Your eyes are really pretty. His face flushed a light shade of pink, and Amari couldn't help but enjoy the sight before her. She then realized she wanted to make him turn even brighter somehow. What are you doing? Amari's eyes then cast into his lips, feeling the pull of them like she was on a string. She needed to show him that she was grateful, so that she could thank him for being so kind. Thinking back to his name, she smiled, knowing she wanted to tell him how special he was to her. Shoto. Trying to show her admiration, Amari gave into her own temptation, and her lips touched his, pushing aggressively into him and feeling the absolute bliss wash over her. She tried to capture what he tasted like, but found it impossible with the amount of alcohol on her breath. His body moved towards her, and Amari gratefully accepted, wrapping her own arms around him, still hungry for his touch and body heat. His scent was driving her absolutely mad, and she found herself wanting more. Suddenly, she felt herself jerk back and blinked only to find the boy looking more red than ever. Touching his face, he must have felt the warmth also. What was that? Mari wanted to talk, but found it difficult as a pounding headache crashed in her ear. She instead buried herself in his shoulder, finding comfort in the darkness. He said something else, but the only thing Amari could hear was loud shouting. It made her irritated. Shut up, you're too loud. His voice stopped then, and Amari was grateful, feeling the warm hum of his body relax her. She then realized just how tired she actually was, giving into the idea altogether. Just then a voice rang in the back of her head, making her stomach drop. You like him, just face it. Amari gasped awake, looking around in her absolute confusion before placing a hand on her head. What the hell even was that? A dream? 'Cause it sure felt real to her, and she didn't like it. Why in the hell? What? Why in the hell would she have had a dream like that? She touched the face that still had a slight warmth to it and sighed heavily. If she started having dreams like these all the time, Amari didn't know how she was going to survive. Then she thought back to the night of her birthday and froze. Wait, she didn't remember anything about that night, only that Todoroki apparently came over. Oh crap, what if something did happen and she jumped him like that? She couldn't even bear the thought. Shaking her head aggressively, Amari found herself touching her lips slightly, remembering the kiss, and gasped. No, there was no way that was real. Todoroki would have said something about it, right? There was absolutely no way that she would have done something like that. Bakugo just walked in by his door, hearing his sister talk to herself, and only shook his head in disappointment. He was already used to her spazzy nature, so this wasn't anything new. She probably just had a weird dream. Just then, the doorbell rang downstairs, and Katsuki frowned, now hearing his mother yell from downstairs. Katsuki, get the door, will ya? Bakugo just groaned, not moving a muscle. That woman was already downstairs. Why couldn't she do it? Screw you, I'm busy, you get it? His mother's voice came back then, louder than before. Boy, I'm going to give you to the count of 3 to open that damn door before I come up there. Don't make me. Katsuki half wanted her to try, but the other half of him was still tired from waking up. He didn't want to deal with her bullshit this early in the morning. He stomped down the stairs as she shouted, 1, 2... Turning his brow in frustration, Bakugo yelled back, I'm already doing it, you damn woman. Just shut up. His mother seemed happy at that as Katsuki slammed open the door, frowning at whoever was on the other side, although he frowned even more when he realized who it actually was. That icy hot bastard. What the hell are you doing here? Todoroki just blinked in response, answering straightforward, I was invited. Bakugo just scoffed at that, putting a hand to the doorframe. Invited? Bullshit. Why are you in the front of my house? You want to fight? But he didn't seem amused in the slightest, sighing heavily. I'm not here for you. This made him even more pissed, stepping forward in intimidation. What the hell does that mean? Then why are you standing on my damn doorstep? Todoroki opened his mouth, but was stopped when Eri came into view, also seeming displeased with her brother's tone. Katsuki, stop it. I invited him here. She then smiled at the boy, grabbing her bag next to her. You ready? Todoroki nodded his head as Katsuki just gasped at the sight before him. When was Icy Hot that close to his sister? He didn't know why, but Bakugo didn't like it. Wait, hold on a damn minute. Don't just invite that bastard here. Where do you even think you're going? But Amari just sighed, lifting her bag to her shoulder and stepping past him. School? I'll see you there. Bakugo remained shocked at his sister, as his sister stepped next to that bastard before turning to leave. Out of everyone in the world, why'd she have to be friends with that cocky son of a bitch? Recalling the conversation they had in the hospital, Bakugo couldn't help but have bad blood against him. Once they had turned the corner, Amari looked over to Todoroki apologetically. Sorry about that. Katsuki is a little irritable in the morning. At her words, he couldn't help but point something out. Isn't he always like that, though? That made her laugh a bit, nodding her head in acceptance. Well, you're not wrong. Amari turned to him then, and couldn't help but replay the strange dream in her head, now feeling slightly embarrassed. She needed to forget about that as soon as possible. Her eyes cast away when Todoroki seemed to have taken notice, leaning closer in concern. Amari, are you feeling all right? Feeling the heat rise in her cheeks, Amari couldn't help but glance at his lips before stuttering back. Oh, yeah, I'm great. Why do you ask? He only frowned at that, taking another step further. She looked really pale all of a sudden for some reason. You look really red. Amari's eyes widened at that, casting her eyes even further away in an attempt to cover her face. That dream was making her go crazy. Oh, really? Yeah, it's kind of warm out today, right? Todoroki noticed her covering her face as a new wave of concern filled his stomach. He thought back to the USJ incident and didn't know if there was something wrong with her or not. She could still be sick. Because of that, he lifted a hand up, placing it on her forehead lightly to check her temperature, only to sigh in relief. Doesn't seem like you have a fever. Are you sure you're alright? At the touch on her skin, Amari's face turned a lighter shade of pink, flashing back to her dream and shaking him off. Yeah, I'm fine, I promise. I think it's just the heat outside. Todoroki still wasn't sure, but she seemed okay, so he dropped the conversation for now, moving back to a spot next to her. Alrighty then. When he moved away, Amari was silently thankful, all because of Aoma's words and that stupid dream. She was falling apart. She hoped this would go away soon, or else Amari didn't know how she was going to deal with it. All she knew was that there was absolutely no way she was going to admit she had feelings for this boy. That would be very dangerous. That would be a very dangerous thing to do. As the two walked into class, Amari and Todoroki couldn't help but stop when they noticed a large crowd of people surrounding the door. What was even going on? The two approached the area, and Amari pushed her way into the crowd, getting caught between the people as she was so small until she reached the door. Although the only problem was there was someone blocking the entryway completely. Clearing her throat, she tried her best to call out for them politely. Excuse me, if I could get by, please. The stranger noticed her voice and turned around, only for Amari's heart to drop. It was the purple-haired weirdo from yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry, Shorty. I didn't see you because you're so small. Amari's brow ticked in annoyance as she pointed an accusatory finger towards him. You? What are you doing here? His eyes turned back to the classroom before shrugging his shoulders. Just checking out the competition. Although this has nothing to do with you, so don't worry about it. She seethed at his response as Shinso just turned around to the rest of the class and ignored her after that, like she wasn't even a threat to him in the slightest. I'm here to let you know that if you don't bring your very best, then I'll steal your spot right from under you. Consider this a declaration of war. The entire class gaped at this, but Amari was just pissed, instead grabbing onto his shoulder and forcing him to turn and acknowledge her. Hold on. You talk all high and mighty for someone that's not even in the hero course. And I was talking to you. Don't just turn around and ignore me, you jerk. Putting his hands in his pockets, Shinso eyed the girl with interest. He definitely had height on his side, towering over her immensely. I already told you I wasn't talking to you, short stuff. I'm here to warn the real competition. She opened her mouth to respond when he turned back around, ignoring her again. It was obvious he hadn't taken her serious. Now, I'm looking for Bakugo Amari. The entire class just froze at that, Shinso obviously not knowing that he had just spoken with her. Well, that was awkward. At her name, Amari lifted her head up and spoke plainly. Oh, so now you want to speak with me? Shinso stopped and turned around, only to smirk, clearly not understanding. I wasn't talking to you, but that's a funny joke. I'm looking for the kid that single-handedly fought those villains at the USJ incident. Just then, Deku perked up and stepped forward. That is Amari-chan, behind you. It took a couple moments for him to process Deku's words before whipping around to the girl he had just insulted. That was impossible. This little girl fought those villains? No way. The other Class 1C students just laughed at the realization, causing Amari's face to fall. Was it really hard to believe that she did that? Shinso thought about it for a couple minutes before cracking a smile. Well, if that's true, then we really won't have to worry. And here I thought you'd be our biggest competition. Her eyebrow twitched at him, then pointing an accusatory finger at him in anger. Listen up, Shinantuz. What? Just for that, I'm going to make sure I kick your ass. The strange name, Shinso's eyes narrowed. It's Shinso, and I'd like to see you try. But Amari just crossed her arms over her chest, clearly not backing down. Oh, really? I think it fits, 'cause I can hear it's an annoying dog barking a bunch of nonsense. Oh, I think it fits. All I can hear is an annoying dog barking a bunch of nonsense. The boy just frowned at that when a new voice entered the space, also unamused. Why the hell is everyone screaming so damn loud this morning? It's giving me a goddamn headache. Shut up, will ya? They all turned around to find Bakugo staring at them annoyed. Katsuki? Shinso took notice to the boy right away, noticing the resemblance between the two. So this is what the majority of Class 1A acts like? Is everyone in the hero course so delusional like you two? Amari half expected him to burst out at the boy in anger, but surprisingly enough, Bakugo didn't do that. Instead, he just narrowed his eyes and pushed past the crowd. You guys don't matter. The only thing that's important is that I beat them. Everyone stood silent at his words before crying out in outrage. Hey, you little brat, you think you're better than us, huh? But Bakugo didn't seem bothered, just grabbing Amari's bag before pulling her away from the other students. Come on, brat. Amari had no choice but to follow him inside the classroom when Aizawa showed up and dispersed the crowd. Hey, Katsuki, I think you fueled the fire. Although he only shrugged before sitting down in his seat. They can talk all they want, but I'll be the one to beat them in the end. If you want to get them to shut their mouths up, then you just gotta prove it. Katsuki gave Amari a knowing look, and she couldn't help but think that he was trying to encourage her somehow, if only a little. She kind of hoped that was the case. As the rest of the students sat down, Aizawa leaned forward in his desk. His face was still completely bandaged up from the USJ fight. Alright, I assume you've heard from the other classes already, but it's almost time for the UA's sports festival. It's a perfect time to be recognized by other top heroes. The class all cheered in excitement, except for Juro, who seemed concerned. Is it okay to have a sports festival so soon after our villains snuck inside? What if they attack us or something? Although Aizawa just nodded his head, already expecting this question. Apparently they think of it as UA showing that our crisis management system is as solid as a rock by holding an event. Security will be strengthened 5 times more than previous years. This is a good chance for you all. Let's not let a few villains spoil it. Everyone seemed to accept this, although some still felt a little worried at the idea, letting Aizawa continue. Anyways, this is a perfect chance to prove your worth to all the top heroes watching. After the sports festival, the one who find you worthy will send an offer to intern at their division, so it's important not to mess up. Nodding their heads enthusiastically, he added something else. Oh, this also means that you'll be competing against your own classmates along with other UA students, so it's important to start thinking about them, since they may be your enemies in the tournament. Amari leaned back in her chair at the information, just reeling in excitement at the very idea. I can't believe I finally get to participate at UA Sports Festival. Katsuki and I used to watch it when he would visit me in the hospital before I moved to America. It's like a dream come true, right, Todoroki? She turned to her friend, but paused when he looked rather zoned out, focusing on something else in particular. He was not happy about the sports festival. Todoroki. At his name, he blinked to life before letting his eyes fall, clearly bothered by something. Yeah? Mari wondered what had gotten into him so suddenly, and when the bell rang after class, she decided to ask him while they were at lunch. They had made plans to eat together, after all. Hey, Todoroki, are you ready for lunch? Standing from her seat, she watched him think about the question for a moment before shaking his head. I'm going to train instead today. This was a surprise to her. It was the first time he mentioned that. Train? I thought we were supposed to have lunch. If you're worried about the sports festival, don't. You have plenty of time still. It doesn't start for another 2 weeks. She put a hand on his arm only for him to shake it off, seeming determined about something. It seemed this sports festival was making him nervous. I can't, I'm sorry. Regardless about us being friends, the fact still remains. You are number 2 recommended, which means you're my biggest competition. I can't take it easy. He was saying those things again, and Mari hadn't heard him talk about that since they first met. What? I already told you that I have no plans on being top hero, so we aren't enemies, silly. But he only looked away from her, grabbing his bag in the process. Maybe, but for the sports festival you are, and I can't take any chances. I can't afford to. Amari tried to say something else, but found herself at a loss for words. He looked so serious about this festival. There must have been something else to it. It seemed that whenever she tried to get closer to him, to learn more about his fears, that he would just shut her down, just like right now. She wished she knew what was making him so anxious. So instead of arguing, Amari just lifted her hand to the back of her neck and replied, If you really need to do this, then I understand. But just know that I would never think of you as an enemy, Todoroki. He thought about the phrase for a moment before turning away from her, a soft mutter in his voice before leaving. I'm sorry. In the next couple of days, Todoroki grew more distant from her, but never told her why. The only thing he did was apologize. It seemed he was even too busy to walk to school together with his training. Mari worried that he might be pushing himself too hard, and that was coming from herself, who was the worst example of that. To be honest, she felt kind of lonely without him next to her, almost like she was missing a part of herself completely. Whatever this feeling was, she didn't like it. She would see him briefly in class, but when the bell rang, he would run off to train during lunch before returning to class and then training again after school. They hardly even spoke anymore. His absence found it hard for her to train as well. Today was different, though, as she was determined to meet him after school and walk home together, or maybe just hang out somewhere. Because of that, she waited in the entryway for him to be done with his sessions. Sighing heavy, she looked out the window below for an annoying only for an annoying voice next to her to speak. Why do you look so depressed? Is it because you realize you won't be able to win the sports festival? Mari glanced to her side to find Shinso staring at her in interest. Too bad for him she wasn't in the mood. I'm not in the mood, Shintoos. Just leave me alone. She slumped down on her hand in a depressed fashion, only to have him twitch. I already told you, it's Shinso. Amari just fired back. And I already told you, I don't care. He raised an eyebrow at that. She seemed even more irritable than usual today. Whoa, be careful. You're starting to sound like your brother. She just groaned at that, locking eyes with him. I have a question. Why are you picking on me out of all of Class 1A? Don't you have anything better to do, like, I don't know, train? Shinso thought about this for a moment before leaning back against the wall, narrowing his eyes in disgust. Did you know that I wanted to be in the hero course as well? But unfortunately I wasn't accepted and was forced to choose another path, such as life. Amari narrowed her eyes in confusion. And what does that have to do with me? Putting a hand up, Shinso continued. Because this is the sports festival. I've finally been given a chance to show everyone that I belong in the hero course. I can't stand people that don't take that honor seriously. At his words, Amari straightened herself, reappearing his words like they were some kind of joke. Oh, and you think I'm not taking it seriously? Leaning closer, she could see for the first time the layers of absolute hatred in his eyes for her, answering back. I know you are. Being a recommended student usually means you come from a well-known family, right? Just looking at you, you'll hardly believe you were accepted in the hero course based on your talent alone. Just that idea that Shinso was even suggesting she was only accepted because some kind of bribery was already insulting. Sure, she may not have looked like a hero, but didn't necessarily mean she didn't work her ass off to get here. This boy was just assuming things about her. As she was going to yell at him, but couldn't find the energy for it, instead just glaring back. You think you know everything about me, huh? Well, I'm sorry to say this, but your assumptions are a bit off, although he didn't seem convinced. I guess we'll see then, if you can prove me wrong, shorty. Amari shrugged her shoulders when she saw Todoroki's two-toned hair approach her, suddenly wanting her conversation to be over with this weirdo. I guess we will. Now, if you excuse me, I have to go. Then before he could say anything, she was already gone, running up to Todoroki and smiling. Todoroki, hey! He stopped when he heard a voice, seeming confused. They hadn't planned to meet up. Amari, what's wrong? But she just shook her head, taking a step closer to him. Oh, it's nothing wrong. Nothing's wrong. I wanted to see you. We haven't talked in a while, so I was wondering if you wanted to go somewhere. There's a new coffee shop, and before she could finish, though, Todoroki put a hand up to stop her, already turning on his shoes. I can't. I have to train. Amari frowned at that, feeling the rejection in her stomach. Again, you've been training nonstop for the past couple of days. You're going to overwork yourself. But he only answered back straightforward. I'm fine. Yet she wasn't convinced in the slightest, reaching out to grab his arm. There was something about the whole thing that was making him anxious, and she was desperate to know what it is. No, you aren't. Why are you tearing yourself apart for this? It's just a sports festival. It's not that big of a deal. At her words, Todoroki tore his arm away from her, recalling the words his father told him just the other day. It wasn't just a sports festival. This was everything for him. She didn't understand. Because he was thinking about his father, Todoroki's reply came out colder than he meant to. Amari, you might not be serious about this, but I am. Her eyes widened at his words, not fully understanding. What are you saying? Casting his eyes away from her, he sighed. You may be satisfied with not being the number one hero, but don't try to lump your wishes with mine. I'm going to win the sports festival and prove myself. I can't afford to have any distractions. The fact that he called her a distraction wasn't lost on her, and it brought a heavy lump in her throat. You think I'm a distraction? He stopped at that, realizing he may have said something wrong. I'm just saying I think it would be best if we stayed separate for a while. I need to think about all of this seriously. Amari could feel the rejection in her heart, but pushed harder, knowing that there was something wrong with this whole thing. What is it about the sports festival, Todoroki? I want to help you, but I can't if you won't tell me what's going on. Todoroki thought about this for a moment before deciding not involving Amari in all his family drama. It's not that he didn't trust her, but she didn't need to know those kinds of things. She already had far too much to worry about. Picking up his bag from the ground, he only sighed before turning his back to her. I have to go. Then he left her alone, wondering just what was going on with him. Why did he feel like he needed to pour everything into the sports festival? What was so special about it? Walking home alone, Amari tried to forget Todoroki's cold words when the phone in her pocket rang loudly. She pulled it out and answered. Hello? Her brother's voice echoed back, seeming annoyed. Hey, brat, get to the training grounds in 10 minutes. Amari just seemed confused by that. What? Why? But Bakugo only answered back gruffly. She could tell from the voices around him that he was walking somewhere. Just do it before I change my mind, will you? Then without another word, he hung up. What was that all about, and why did he want to meet her at the training grounds? Although she couldn't help but remain curious at the idea, this was the first time Katsuki had invited her somewhere. Just because of that, she couldn't turn it down. Opening the door to the training grounds, she found her brother in the corner, leaning over a bench while tying his shoes. When she approached, he just scoffed. About damn time. I was about to leave you. Amari looked around at the area, not really understanding why she was here. Why'd you call me here, Katsuki? But he only responded by throwing a large duffel bag in her direction, almost knocking her over completely, given her size. You want to beat that Class 1C extra, right? At Shinso's name, Amari threw the duffel bag aside. Yeah, but why are we here? Frowning, Bakugo stepped closer into the training ring before lifting his arms out in a challenge. No sister of mine is going to flat out embarrass me during this tournament. Amari thought about his words for a moment before connecting the pieces in a gasp. He was trying to help her. Wait, you want to train together? But Bakugo only scoffed again, shaking his head. As if. Last time we fought, you pissed out, so I want you to use all your power on me this time. Thinking back to the combat training exercise, she didn't understand where he was coming from. She had used everything within her to fight him back then. What do you mean? Bakugo looked down at her hand before pointing. Don't play dumb. The explosion quirk. You have it too, right? Her eyes widened at that, not really wanting to bring it up. I don't know what you're talking about. But Katsuki was faster, cutting her off. It was obvious he didn't believe her words. Bullshit, I saw you use it during the USJ fight. Don't lie to me, Amari. Nervously shaking her head, she replied back, Can we just pretend like you never saw that? It doesn't really matter anyways, I can't use it. Although Bakugo was not convinced. And why the hell not? That just seems like an excuse to me. She thought for a moment, not really knowing how to explain this to her brother. But one thing was for sure, Amari needed him to understand why she couldn't. Putting a hand up, she answered back, I'll never really been able to control them. You saw the USJ fight. It wasn't of my protective shields. You would have been hit. If it wasn't for my protective shields, you would have been hit with the impact as well. Bakugo remembered that clearly. It was a day he'd like to forget, but to be completely honest, Amari's quirk back there and uncontrolled. That's why Katsuki brought her here in the first place, to train. If there was anyone that could show her how to control the explosions, it would be Katsuki. Crossing his arms across his chest, Bakugo took a step further in inspection. What was your trigger for them? Everyone had a trigger to activate their quirk, something that they could think about or feel in order for the strength to increase or lessen. Amari's face fell at that, feeling suddenly cautious. It usually manifests under a heightened state of emotion, usually like anger or stress. Anger mostly, though, it is what triggers it the strongest. But before he could answer back, she spoke again, this time slightly pleading. Let's just say that I've been suppressing a lot of emotion and things over the years, pushing them down into myself. And if I pop the top off that lid, who knows what could happen. So that's why I try to stay away from those kinds of feelings. She hoped Bakugo would have understood after that, choosing to respect her decision and back away from this. But unfortunately, that was not her brother. All I'm hearing is some damn excuses. Quit being such a coward and use your full strength. Mari shook her head at that, clearly annoyed. No, you don't understand. But Bakugo just cut her off, clearly over her explanation. Oh, I do. You're being a damn coward, Amari. If we are going to go against each other again, you better not pull this kind of crap. I don't want your half-assed feelings. She frowned as Bakugo shook his head in annoyance, already walking away from her. I don't even know why I'm wasting my time on someone who isn't serious. At the word serious, something snapped inside Amari. What was with that freaking word? It seemed like everyone was saying it to her today. She wasn't serious? What a joke. Bakugo moved towards the door, then suddenly he was stopped by a gold wall, blocking his path from exiting. The hell? That's when he heard a voice behind him, low and quiet. You can call me anything you want, Katsuki, but don't ever say I am not serious. He turned around only to find her eyes burning more than ever before. There was a new and frightening aura around her now. Bringing her hands forward in exasperation, Amari spoke darkly. What the hell is wrong with everyone today? First Shinso, then Todoroki, and now you. What do I have to do to prove that I'm serious? Do I have to cut out my own damn heart for you to finally believe me, huh? Bakugo watched as her palms sparked to life just then. Small lights gracing her palms. Her emotions were increasing by the second, maybe a little too fast. Amari. But she only shook her head, feeling the uncupped rage built up in her stomach from the last couple of days. Not serious? What a fucking joke. Do you even understand what I had to go through to get here? What I had to live through? And yet I'm the one that is pushed aside all the damn time like I don't even matter? Feeling slightly worried for her, Bakugo put his arms up only for her to run at him, palms extended in a blinding, absolute rage. Hey, calm down. Yet Amari was too far gone, throwing a punch at him and letting a small explosion hit the ground next to her. She found his words funny for some reason. Calm down? I thought you wanted to see me like this, Katsuki. You wanted me not to be a coward, so here I am. This is who I am. A goddamn train wreck. Katsuki dodged her punch only for another one to come straight down above him. Her fighting, it was erratic and sloppy. Bakugo soon realized that Amari was right. She couldn't control herself like this. He shouldn't have pushed her this hard. Damn it, Amari! He let off a large explosion next to her shoulder, causing her to hiss and let go in anger. What? Am I not being serious enough for you? Am I still too small to be taken serious, Katsuki? Cursing, he threw himself into the air before landing behind her and surprising his sister with a surprise attack from behind. Die. Letting off an explosion, Amari flew back a couple feet, groaning as she hit the ground. Bakugo thought it was over then. Well, that was until she stood back up. You think I'd give up that easily? Amari's hands lit up as she blindly threw punches and explosions in Bakugo's path, now far too blinded by her own rage to think logically. What do I have to do to show everyone that I belong here? Why can't they acknowledge me as a threat? He dodged them easily, noticing her losing control of her quirk quickly. Amari's breath came out a bit faster then, thinking about the day she had before this. Am I really just a distraction? Do I really not matter? Why can't anyone see that I'm clawing my way into this life? Even if it's God damn kills me. Tears appeared on the face as she cried out. I don't understand. What am I doing wrong? How can I get them to recognize me? That's all I want. Unable to hold back the rest of emotions crashing into her, Amari stopped her punches then, just putting a hand to her mouth and trying to stop a sob. I can't. Falling to her knees, Bakugo watched her in fear before racing up to her, thinking she was hurt in some way. Hey, but she just shook her head, her voice coming out scratchy and hurt. I'm sorry, Katsuki. I can't stop it. It just won't stop. I don't know what to do. It was obvious that she couldn't control her explosions, or the feelings that came over her during the process. It was heartbreaking to watch her break down like this, unsure of what to do. Bakugo stared at her for a moment, not really good with tears, and put a hand to her shoulder, supporting her silently. Sorry, I shouldn't have pushed you. Shaking her head, Amari grabbed onto her brother's shirt and let the devastational wave wash over her slowly. When she'd calmed down a bit, Bakugo knew what he had to do. He had to help her. I'll show you how to control it. God damn it. Amari nodded her head weakly, looking up to him. Really? I don't know if I can. Although Katsuki only shrugged, extending his hands to help her up. Of course you can. You're a Bakugo, after all. That one at the end there made me start to tear up. Gotta admit that one. Check her out. Link will be in the description, like the usual. Yeah. You will hear me in the next video. Bye-bye.